Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views we hope are relevant to you. Today, more and more information floods in about the Hindu-instigated violence that tore through Brampton in Canada on Monday. We have more of the details, more of the reaction from the various communities, and we take a look at the bigger agenda at play as it all starts to come a little clearer. In India, a member of the Congress Party, of all people, demands that the Sikh genocide is recognised as thus, and not simple riots. And as I'm sure most of our audience will be mightily sick of the subject by now, we promise the show will barely even mention the US elections, you'll be relieved to know. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and a little twist there. I got a surprise video to pop up just for you as we start the day, and we've got a long show, but well, good evening there, Angus, and all of our viewers out there. I just thought I would sit down and do this before the show starts, and you know what this is? May look like a pumpkin pie, but I never in a million years thought Donald Trump would win this election, and I called for Harris to win it. So this is a big slice of humble pie. I must eat this because Trump won and will be the next president of the United States of America. Take care, all. Just for you, Angus.
And we will leave the subject at that for now, but as I'm sure our audience will be delighted to know, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news other than the US elections today affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking taking a look at loads of your great comments which have been pouring in beneath our videos, so thank you as always for those. Right, James, let's get things serious. Let's take a look at what's been happening in Brampton recently. Let's kick things off with your first take on that story.
Absolutely, Angus, and we have a lot to cover on that story, so we're going to go quick tonight in terms of jamming all of this information in. So I want to start first with a CBC report on the incidents that have been taking place, and I think that this will set us up for the other information that we'll share to follow. And it has just been an incredibly insane situation going on, and I just have to pull up my video, Angus. I've lost it there.
Now, last night's protest is one of multiple protests that have occurred in the last few days here in Peel region. We know that on Sunday, Peel police have now charged 3 men in connection with weekend protests. On Sunday, we know there was some with charges including assault of a peace officer. Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown has spoken to Metro Morning this morning about some of the violence, condemning the violence. Here's a little of what he had to say.
What I've been saying is that everyone needs to de-escalate. I know tensions are high right now, but the starting point is we don't need to have protests at places of worship. There is the right to protest, but it doesn't need to be in the vicinity of a place of worship. Everyone has the right.
And next we'll take a look at a report by Baz Media, and they have been reporting on the events of the Hindu groups in Ontario that have been stoking the violence and really getting out there and creating chaos, not only in the Sikh community, but also for law enforcement, for communities, and the entire city and country. So it has just caused such chaos that it is just unheard of in terms of Canadian unsettlement, Canadian law enforcement. So let's take a look here at first, of course, the groups that are speaking out right now, and that, of course, would be led by the Canadian Sikh organization, condemning the attacks on the Malton Gurdwara, as well as the other acts of violence, including those in Surrey, British Columbia. So the Sikhs have also called on Canadian authorities to take decisive action against individuals who incited violence during the anti-Sikh hate speeches at the Hindu Sabha Mandir parking lot. And as you can see in the image in this article, there are, a lot of people there, but they estimate actually over 400 people throughout the night showed up, causing chaos in the streets and attacking police, among others. Now, Sikh organizations, we'll continue with this article. So Sikh organizations and Gurdwaras from across Canada strongly condemn the attack on the Sri Guru Singh Sabha Multan late last night and denounced ongoing efforts by the Indian authorities to incite violence and division within Canada. Attacks on peaceful Sikh protesters in Brampton and Surrey also highlight the ongoing challenges faced by the Sikh community in exercising their democratic rights due to the ongoing Indian foreign interference activities, which we have covered in length. Indian consulates have organized consular camps in various cities across Canada, including within places of worship. The Sikh community has shown strong opposition to the presence of Indian diplomats in the community. We'll just skip through here and cherry pick some of the other parts of this article. So yesterday, during a protest against one of the visiting Indian consulate camps at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, pro-India counter-protesters violently confronted the Sikh protesters. And the videos of that event are just disgusting for such behavior. Following the incident, the pro-India protesters were recorded and openly inciting violence against Sikhs, which we'll show some more information about as well. Now, according to the Peel Police, later the same day, pro-India demonstrators proceeded to the Westwood Mall in Malton, where a police officer was injured controlling the crowd. The group also targeted the Sri Guru Singh Sabha Gurdwara, with several hundred pro-India protesters, many masked and wielding weapons, attempting to storm the premises. Sikh community members stood in defense of the Gurdwara, while Peel police managed to repel the attackers and arrest 3. Despite police intervention, pro-India protesters continued to provoke, hurling profanities at the Gurdwara and its congregation throughout the night, not to mention making some very lewd hand gestures, among other things. And we'll actually be getting into another part of this where there were individuals actually talking about bombs and going after the Sikh community that way as well. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. Indian media outlets have attempted to misrepresent these protests as anti-Hindu events associated with the Diwali celebrations. Now, it should be noted that for many years now, the consulate has done these reach programs, and there have been protests before. However, they've never gone to this scale, and it shows the tension and the impacts that the India media machine and their propaganda is having on communities here in Canada. CSIS detail India's aggressive use of disinformation and psychological warfare to discredit and malign Sikh activists nationwide. India's disinformation campaigns have propagated false narratives of sectarian conflict, attempting to mischaracterize anti-India protests as anti-Hindu. And that is a very important point, because it's not anti-Hindu. And I've seen several interviews with Sikh leaders and other members of the community who have also very clearly stated that this is speaking out against the Modi government, against the Brahmins, against all of what they are doing in terms of the transnational repression and other issues, but not against the Hindu people themselves. The organized forays of Indian diplomats into Canadian communities appear designed to incite conflict and must cease. We urge Gurdwaras across Canada to remain vigilant and ensure the safety of their congregants. Now, as someone who resides in the communities, Angus, the consulates are not that difficult to access from Surrey, so I still don't understand why it is so important that they go out and actually have these events in the Gurdwaras or temples throughout Metro Vancouver. The other incident that happened on Saturday, or the other event that happened on Saturday, I mean, that was right in the city of Vancouver. I don't see why people couldn't just head downtown to the consulate or to other areas. I don't see why they had to be in these places of worship. It just doesn't seem logical to me for any other reason than to incite divide and to incite more problems as they continue to spread misinformation. And that misinformation is continuing. The India government, the story that we'll cover tomorrow night, the India government is actually blaming Canada and saying that they are teaming up with teaming up with Pakistan to attack India. And that's not the case at all, while they still demand that and claim they have irrefutable evidence. But we'll cover that tomorrow, Angus. Over on Over on X, formerly Twitter, and other social media, this is the type of information that we're getting at this time, and this is leadership that is helpful. The vast majority of Sikh Canadians and Hindu Canadians want to live in harmony and don't tolerate violence. So again, the people that you're seeing in the videos is very small representation of the total community. The Hindu Sabha Mandir president, Mr. Lama, has suspended the pundit who spread the violent rhetoric. So that is big news as well. And we saw many videos online of him really encouraging the violence and working up the crowds. And at one point, even offering, some of the individuals were offering swords and other weapons to people that wanted to carry them forward onto the streets and over to the event near the malls and near the Gurdwaras. So, I mean, just the inciting of violence is just at a whole new level. This post here went on to say that, remember, we all have more in common than what divides us. In tense times, we can let the agitators fuel the flames of division. The leadership of both Sikh and Hindu communities in the GTA do not want this division, hate, and violence. Again, they do not want this. I'm asking everyone in the community to not respond to the violence and hate. Law enforcement will be there to respond. This is their job. Okay, we must continue to be the country of rule, the rule of law is followed. And again, that's a great post because it really hits to the overall feeling in the community, and we really need to see that. You'll see two different letters down at the bottom here of this post, and I will just quickly cover those as well, Angus. And those are essentially coming out from both sides of the fence. Now, let's take a look at the first one here. And this is from the Hindu Sabha. And again, this was dated today or yesterday, I guess. Due to controversial involvement in the Hindu Sabha priest Rajinder Prasad with the non-permitted protesters, at the Hindu Sabha premises on the 3rd of November, they are suspending Rajinder Prasad with immediate effect. So that is effective immediately. They have suspended that individual, and I think that that was a very important first step in trying to calm the tensions and to calm what's going on in the community as a whole. Now, the second statement was from the Ontario Sikhs and Gurdwara Council, and it very clearly states that they are condemning violence outside the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton. The OSGC strongly condemned the incident of violence outside the Hindu Sabha Mandir on Gore Street in Brampton. Violence and intimidation have no place in our community, where peace, unity, and mutual respect are the values we hold near and dear. Places of worship should remain sacred spaces for the reflection, spirituality, and community cohesion, free from violence or disturbances. We urge everyone to exercise restraint, promote dialogue, and work together towards peace that is respective of all communities. The incident outside the temple is a distressing reminder that the need for understanding and mutual respect in our community. The OSGC is committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of all community members and supporting an environment where people can feel safe and respected regardless of beliefs. We call on local authorities to thoroughly investigate the incident, reaffirming that violence has no place in our society. We also encourage community leaders and members to come together, support one another, and foster an atmosphere of unity and compassion. Let us stand united against all forms of violence as we work towards peaceful and harmonious community. And that is signed there, Angus. And I think that it really goes to show the level of love that the Sikh community has for all members, not just the Sikh community or the Muslim community, the Christians, but everybody, including the Hindu community. They want to live in peace. They want, just like in Punjab, and when they get their own independent state of Khalistan, they will again encourage unity, of peacefulness, of everyone coming together as one. And I think that really speaks to that nature of what amazing place Khalistan will become in the future, Angus. When we go ahead and take a quick peek at a few other posts here, it appears that Modi is playing us yet again, says David Mulrooney. There is no reason why India can't explain its pension system to its nationals living in Canada from within the walls of its consulates, or better, by video conferencing. India would not tolerate such diplomatic freelancing at home. And again, that is something that I just stated, that I don't understand why they are continuing to hold these at religious locations. I just don't see any cause, need, or requirement for that. So again, that is just, in my opinion, just trying to incite issues, trying to incite violence, and to incite division in the communities as a whole. And again, it's just not something that should be expected. Finally here, Graham McGregor in Brampton says, let's call this exactly what it is. Disgusting hate speech that has no place in Canada. I know my community in Brampton is better than this. A small number of those who speak to divide and intimidate do not define who we are as Bramptonians. I'm disturbed by other videos from last night showing protesters carrying weapons, marching to gurdwaras, and threatening Peel police with weapons. This type of hate and violence do not belong in Canada. And again, a very, very sharply worded, but very clear and precise to what needed to be said, and what I think is even more important that people need to hear. And when it comes down to the overall atmosphere, it is really just a mess of a mess, Angus. People are just going off the deep end on this. And I'm just going to bring up our the video that I wanted to show earlier, and that was about the weapons.
Peel Police issued a public safety alert last night after weapons were seen in a demonstration near a Hindu temple in Brampton. Clara Pasika is at the temple on the Gore Road. Clara, what can you tell us?
Dwight, I'm outside this Hindu temple, Sabha Mandir in Brampton. We know that large crowds rallied outside here last night. Police didn't initially break up this crowd, but did begin to break up this crowd when it moved down the Gore Road towards a Sikh place of worship. Some demonstrators were seen kicking vehicles, others brandishing sticks. In videos, we also saw several pieces of broken brick or rock, and you can take a closer look at those behind me here, still on those walls. We're not sure what protest those were from. At around 9:30 p.m., we know that Peel Police released that public safety alert saying that weapons were seen within the crowd, telling people that they needed to disperse immediately or face arrest. And we also know that Toronto police also joined Peel Police in their efforts to respond to this situation.
So as you can see, Angus, it's really hit a wide array of people in the community. It is just really looking to reshape what we allow in terms of protesting and different rallies around places of worship. And it was just a horrible thing all the way around. And hopefully the tempers are coming down. I visited the Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey last night, as well as taking a pass by the Hindu temple, and things were calm there, increased security, but the calmness definitely was notable. And in the final part of that video where I scrolled down and highlighted, after the video, it was showing that there were actually individuals who were saying that they would come down with bombs and Molotov cocktails to actually attack from behind. And we're telling people, do not throw the bombs or the Molotov cocktails from the front because you'll be seen. Instead, throw them from the back of the crowd so that you can blend in and get away. So it shows the level of violence that is being perpetrated at the hands of the India state, encouraging such acts here on Canadian soil, Angus.
Yeah, there's as more and more details pour in from these events. I think at this stage, let's just take a look at everything that's happened at face value, and I'll talk when I come on to my review of reactions. There is actually a bigger picture that's being built here, but at this stage, let's just take a look at the face value facts. What's happened here is we have two communities, the Sikh community and the Hindu community, who've lived side by side for many, many years, decades even, quite amicably, all getting on perfectly well for many, many years. And suddenly now we have this eruption of violence. We suddenly find that two communities are suddenly turning on each other. to the extent where the Hindu community are even going armed with swords, as has been reported, armed with petrol bombs. This is not just your little scuffles in the street. This is full-on, full-scale riots. And all the while, we've got the Indian government stoking the fires. We've got we even have the Indian Prime Minister making statements publicly condemning the Sikh communities, etc. We have the Canadian government just standing back in almost shock and saying, "Hang on, what on earth is going on here?" We have the local mayor saying, "Look, calm down, everybody. What's going on? We've all lived perfectly happily for many years. What's this all about? Let's just respect each other's livelihoods, each other's religions, each other's communities, etc., etc." So on the face value, this has just come out of nowhere, really. I mean, of course, we from our perspective know it hasn't come out of nowhere, and again, we'll talk more about that in a moment. But certainly for the average Canadian who isn't aware of these community tensions, they're looking at this saying, hang on a second, what on earth is going on here? Suddenly we've got two communities at each other's throats, almost literally. And the other strange sort of element to all this, and again, it will start to become a little bit clearer when we take a look at the bigger agenda at play, is these consulate camps. India is by constitution a secular nation. It is supposed to respect everybody's religions, but religion is not supposed to enter the structure, the infrastructure of governance. It is the Indian government, by virtue of its constitution, is supposed to be a secular government. Yet we find one of the most fundamental parts of governance, which is the issuance of visas for people coming in and out of India. They're setting up consulate camps, these camps as they call these basically these events where people can come and apply for visas, etc. But they're not holding them in the consulates or in any consular premises. They're holding them in Hindu temples, and therefore linking the government to one specific religion. Why aren't they holding these consulates in gurdwaras, for example, or in mosques, for example? They're holding them in Hindu temples. That in itself raises a lot of questions. So, James, I think before we sort of move on to start looking at the bigger picture, I think looking at it at face value, it raises so many questions. And this also, and I think one of our commenters actually the other day mentioned this, there is an interesting link to a very similar situation that happened here in the UK. I think it was about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We had some very violent and very upsetting scenes in a city in the Midlands of the UK, Leicester, where we have a very large Islamic population, Muslim population, but also we have members from other communities, including the Hindu population. And there were these quite bad riots that were whipped up, again, out of nowhere, where Hindus were stood up against Muslims face to face in the streets and throwing weapons and fire bombs at each other. These are communities that have lived in the past side by side, quite relatively peacefully speaking. And yet that one came out of nowhere. It all, again, points to something is going on behind the scenes, James. But at this stage, I just want to talk about the face value. This is not good for Western democracies. This is not good for modern society. We should not be seeing communities in multicultural countries fighting against each other. It is no good for their own communities. It is no good for the society within which they live. And all it does, actually, ironically, is it stokes up tension with, I was going to say indigenous, that's the wrong word, with the white population, should we say, and certainly the right wing amongst the whites. It gives them ammunition saying, look what's happened. We've let these people into our countries, and all they're doing is stoking tension. So it's stoking racism against these very communities. So again, it's feeding the machine. It's feeding the racism machine. It's feeding the right-wing machine. It's just feeding a machine that brings down societies. And this again starts to point to a wider agenda at play, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I just threw up there as you were finishing up the exact comments that were made by some about the petrol bombs there. And yeah, I just don't understand how we could get to this point and allow India and Modi to have such an influence on what's going on in Canada. And we have to remember, I keep saying this, that if we allow this violence to happen and this hatred and division to happen, we are letting Modi win. And we can't let Modi win in influencing anything in Canada. We are a peaceful nation. We are a multicultural nation, and we have for many, many decades lived together. I can say not perfectly, but we definitely are better than this as a whole.
Indeed we are. And as we move on this story, then I'm going to start now trying to piece some of these disparate pieces of information together and trying to build up this bigger picture, because clearly there is an agenda that is becoming clearer and clearer, particularly when you start to look at all the elements that are falling into place. What is going on? What is this all about? Well, let's we take a look at the face value facts. Let's now continue that to some degree, and let's start to put all these pieces of the jigsaw into place. So, James, you touched on a lot of this already, and we have the footage. And in fact, we showed a bit of this yesterday. The footage of a Hindu mob who attacked a random Sikh family who were driving by in a car. And that car actually contained a 6-year-old girl. So this is starting to get a little bit nasty now. This isn't just, men facing off in a violent riot. This is now attacking families with children. So this is where it starts to get, it steps up a gear in violence. And of course, we have on video now circulating across social media various videos of a lot of what's been going on behind the scenes with the Hindu mobs. And one of those videos was, of course, a Hindu caught on camera with his megaphone shouting to a big crowd, calling for the storming of Sikh places of worship. And of course, that crowd are getting whipped up. They are joining in, they're cheering him on, saying, yes, we must get out there. We also have another video that's doing the rounds across social media. Again, this is another Hindu addressing a crowd, claiming that they have to think about their future generations. And this gentleman says, Hindus must be united. We don't oppose anyone. So here we go in the face of, look, we're trying to be reasonable here. We don't oppose anybody. But if someone opposes us, then what are we going to do about it? And of course, unsurprisingly, the crowd start chanting back, kill them, kill them, kill them. So again, it's all very clear what's going on here. And this is a very familiar story. It's unfolded across history. These are crowds being whipped up by agents provocateurs, to use that French phrase. And to translate that into English, is people deliberately planted to provoke a reaction, to whip up the mob. Interesting parallels. The Sikh genocide, what happened in 1984, 40 years ago, almost to the very day. 40 years ago, we had this same situation. We had agents provocateurs standing up in front of crowds, whipping the crowds up into a frenzy, a fury, demanding action, that they must go out there with their swords, with their iron rods to go out and attack Sikhs. Interesting parallel, isn't it? Yeah, it's happening all over again. And in social media, this has even been equated to recent times to what happened with ISIS and the Islamic extremists, whipping up the crowds again. So, and again, James, another element that you pointed to, this is actual quotes taken from Hindu agents provocateurs. They said on social media, as they communicated amongst their followers, let's do this, let's make petrol bombs, then they'll see. We'll stand at places and throw the bombs at them. They won't be left to do anything. Brothers, the boy's right, let's make petrol bombs. Even if the police are there outside the mandir, we'll throw the bombs over their heads. And somebody says, look, in a big crowd, they won't be able to see where the bombs are coming from. So make sure that you stand behind the crowds when you throw the petrol bombs. So in other words, you can't be identified. Again, this is signs of organisation. Again, parallels to 1984 November. Again, it was the hidden hand orchestrating the movement, orchestrating the crowds. This is how you go about it. And in this case, this is how you go about it to send across petrol bombs without getting caught and stirring up the problems, stirring up the hatred. Again, you see, the questions are now starting to find answers. We talk here about the Mayor of Brampton. James, you already shared this up, and the Mayor, bless him, has had no choice but to stand up and say, look, come on, we've got to pour calm on these troubled waters. And he actually pointed, he's done exactly what he should do as leader, as an administrative leader of the region. He's stood up, he's thanked both communities, the Hindu and the Sikh communities, for actually coming out publicly and condemning the violence. And he said, this is the sort of leadership we want. This is what we want to see from both communities, because we must not let these agitators, key word here, agitators, fuel the flames of division. Again, there's another clue here pointing to the big agenda, what's going on. And he says the leadership of both Sikh and Hindu communities don't want this division, hate and violence. And he asked for everybody in the community to not respond to violence and hatred. And he again points to the public press release released by the Ontario Sikhs and Gurdwara Council, who, as James, as you pointed out, have called for peace and calm. Interesting, and I think the most significant element of all this is, as we talked about earlier, is the Hindu Sabha itself coming out and actually finger-pointing the controversial involvement of priest Rajinder Parsad with the protesters, and they have themselves ejected with immediate effect priest Rajinder Parsad. Now let's take a look at another, and I'll call him another agent provocateur, Chandra Araya. Yes, James, this nemesis character of Canadian politics, who's always there stirring the pot. He tweeted yesterday, "A red line has been crossed by Canadian Khalistani extremists." Yeah, here we go again, labelling the Khalistani campaigners as extremists. Let me put this into context, that the Khalistan campaigners carrying the Khalistan flags outside the Hindu temples were there peacefully protesting against the presence of consulate officials in the temples. They should not have been there. They were saying, why is the Indian government interfering clearly in the Hindu temples? What's going on here? But they were standing there peacefully. There was no violence. There was no extremism. And yet Chandra Araya, this RSS mouthpiece, once again, wades in on social media to say the attack by Khalistanis on the Hindu Canadian devotees inside the temple in Brampton shows how deep and brazen the violent extremism has become in Canada. I begin to feel there's a small grain of truth in the reports that, in addition to Canadian political apparatus, Khalistanis have effectively infiltrated our law enforcement agencies. Interesting comment here in the context of how we've reported recently and regularly how the RSS have actually infiltrated law enforcement agencies. Here, an age-old tactic. Let's turn it on its head. And this is this RSS mouthpiece claiming that Khalistani extremists have infiltrated law enforcement. And then he says, no wonder that under the freedom of expression, Khalistani extremists, again, how many times has he used this frame of Khalistani extremists in this one tweet, are getting a free pass in Canada. He's been saying for a long time, Hindu Canadians for the security and safety of our community need to step up and assert their rights. Again, agent provocateur, he's stirring the pot. Another RSS mouthpiece, stirring the pot, stirring division, stirring up the Hindu mob to go out and effectively, indirectly attack the Sikh community. So again, it's all part of pointing the finger, is painting this picture of what's going on of this agenda. The Globe and Mail in Canada, again, is being regularly criticised as being another mouthpiece of the RSS, regularly coming out with anti-Sikh propaganda, let's call it for what it is. Their headline yesterday, Modi links Hindu temple violence in Brampton with attempts to intimidate Indian diplomats in Canada. So again, this is a reference to Khalistani extremists attacking a Hindu temple. Now you get to see a narrative unfolding that it's the Khalistanis who are causing all these problems. There's nothing to do with the Hindu mobs who actually been seen on camera now trying to provoke trouble, armed with swords, armed with fire bombs, etc. No, it's Khalistani extremists, is the narrative being pumped out by the RSS. Even the BBC here in the UK reports that Narendra Modi has criticised, quote, the cowardly attempts to intimidate our diplomats in this deepening diplomatic row. So again, even the BBC are linking the violence in Brampton with the expelling of the diplomats, of course, the Najjar killing, etc., etc. They report Modi's words. Modi himself said, such acts of violence will never weaken India's resolve. We expect the Canadian government to ensure justice and uphold the rule of law. Oh, the irony. I mean, a sentence that drips with irony about the rule of law coming from Narendra Modi, that great ignorer of the rule of law in India. But look at, again, the narrative coming out. India standing up strong against what they're claiming. It's Khalistani violence. Again, this narrative, this nonsense narrative that it's the Khalistani extremists that are causing acts of violence against India. despite the fact it's the Hindu mobs that have actually been out there and caught on camera as perpetuating the violence. The RSS, agent provocateur, out there whipping up the mobs, trotting out this narrative again. And again, the India's foreign ministry themselves said extremists and separatists were behind the violence, calling on the Canadian government to ensure that all places of worship are protected from such attacks. Again, the narrative comes out, covering their tracks. They're saying it's the Khalistani protesters out there who were attacking the mandirs. I'm sorry, but show us any evidence on camera anywhere from the last 48, 72 hours where any Khalistani campaigner attacked a mandir. Show us the evidence. There is not any evidence out there, yet there are hundreds of videos on social media of Hindu mobs armed attacking the police, attacking Sikh campaigners, etc., etc. The BBC also report that Sikhs for Justice also described the incident as an unprovoked violent attack on peaceful pro-Khalistan demonstrators. And Justin Trudeau came out and said the violence was unacceptable. Every Canadian has the right to practice their faith freely and safely. Now, of course, unsurprisingly, the Godi media are up in. They are frothing at the mouth. This is a gift to them. They're saying, "Great, we can now extol this narrative once again. It's Khalistani extremists in Canada. Yes, Canada, that great harbourer of terrorists. Well, here they are at it again. Khalistani extremists are attacking Hindu temples, completely ignoring the truth once again." So, Times of India says an attack by Khalistani activists on Hindus who'd gathered at the mandir. Yeah, again, trotting out this narrative that all the violence wasn't Hindus, it was Khalistani activists attacking the mandir. Show us the evidence. Where's the evidence? I don't see any pictures or videos on your websites of this so-called violence by what you call Khalistani activists. I see lots of videos the other way around of Hindu violent extremists. So in other words, the truth is out there. But India doesn't want to entertain the truth, as always. The Indian population is being fed an absolute collage of lies and fake narrative. Times of India, again, even trotted out yesterday. Trudeau is sociologically and politically an idiot. And they're quoting a Canadian Sikh ex-minister, and they twisted this whole story just again to smear and undermine the credibility of Justin Trudeau. They're at their same old tricks. They just cannot help themselves. Again, the Godi media is in absolute top gear now because they're running scared now. They're trotting out all this anti-Trudeau propaganda, anti-Khalistan propaganda. So the Sikh community themselves, of course, have had to come out publicly and call out a lot of this propaganda. The Dal Khalsa, who reported on yesterday, have been very active, very vocal. They had that seminar a couple of days ago. And they, since, of course, this news broke of this violence in Brampton, they've said they've reacted sharply on the situation. And they released a statement saying the news about the attack on Hindu temples spread by mainstream media and endorsed by Indian leadership, including Modi, was completely untrue rather than a white lie. The fact is that Khalistani sympathisers and pro-Indian activists clashed with each other on the streets outside the temple where the Indian consulate was holding a camp. The president of the Dal Khalsa, Pramjit Singh Mann, said, instead of acknowledging the reality, Modi adopted tit-for-tat tactics to browbeat the Canadian government led by Trudeau, who has put the Modi government in the dock by blaming Indian spy agency RAW for assassinating Najjar last year. And taking a jibe at Mr Modi, Kanwar Pal Singh said, it's astonishing that Prime Minister, who never said a word about all the violence in Manipur for months, has reacted so quickly on an overseas minor clash. Interesting parallel there. Yeah, of course, the months of violence in Manipur, Modi never said a word. He was silent to his shame for months. And yet we have a little clash in Brampton, Ontario, and is suddenly making statements to the international press. What does that say? And the Dal Khalsa continues that last night was a culmination of discord that was simmering over the last year or so. Of course, after a handful of right-wing Hindu leaders in Brampton were heard delivering provocative statements. Again, this clue, delivering provocative statements, which, if not firmly stopped, can turn a situation from bad to worse, etc., etc. Kendri Sri Guru Singh Sabha, the KSGSS, has also come out and said they've made their own statement. This is a Sikh organisation condemning the attacks on the Gurdwaras. Of course, don't forget that the actual attacks that happened here were Hindu mobs attacking Gurdwaras across Canada. And they said, as per the usual Hindutva practice, yesterday's protests against the Indian consulate staffers camping at the Toronto Hindu Sabha temple was used as a pretext to mobilise ultra-nationalist elements against the Sikhs and to attack their religious place. It seems that Hindutva elements were well prepared in advance and waiting for the opportunity to attack and spill out their venomous, aggressive propaganda. Hindutva politics, already being practiced in Canada and other Western countries, has only one agenda, that is to polarise residents of Indian origin to create a fake narrative that projects Sikhs as a threat to India. Hindutva politics of targeting and demonising Sikhs began in the 1980s, has strengthened over the past 40 years. That's why the perpetrators of 1984 genocide have enjoyed impunity from the law and still remain scot-free, while thousands of innocent victims are still denied justice. We therefore appeal to Sikhs abroad that they should avoid falling into the Hindutva trap, should act democratically, taking inspiration and direction on from Guru Granth Sahib Ji and the Gurus. Now, all the clues are there. It doesn't take a rocket science to work out what's going on here. First of all, we've got agent provocateur, clearly from India, whipping up the mobs. The Khalistani campaigners were out there protesting against something fundamentally wrong, and that is the Indian state using temples for government business, the consular business, which they shouldn't be doing. So rightly so, the Khalistan campaigners were out there campaigning peacefully, protesting against this. So, of course, the RSS has seen a golden opportunity here. Let's get all our agents provocateurs, let's push out this narrative that the Khalistanis have been attacking temples, and we can therefore rightly be justified in going out and attacking them. So, of course, the Hindu mobs have been whipped up. They've gone out there whipped up by key people, pushed by the RSS. The RSS, this is a well-oiled, well-practiced machine to go out there and get Hindus, ordinary Hindus who actually otherwise wouldn't want to be involved in violence around the streets. They've been whipped up by the mobs. These men with megaphones, remember the man with a megaphone? Kill them, kill them. Yeah, ordinary Hindus who wouldn't dream of normally being violent are being whipped up. This is human emotion. They're only human beings. It's very easy to whip up human beings into a frenzy of anger. Look at 1930s Germany. The Nazi Party did it. Look what ordinary Germans were capable of in the 1930s. Ordinary decent people suddenly ended up in a country that were gassing millions of people to death. This is what India is capable of. This is what the RSS are up to. They are whipping up ordinary, decent Hindus to turn against their fellow human beings, the Sikh community and indeed the Muslim community. This is what is unfolding here. It's very obvious. Now, the bigger picture. I've talked about the bigger picture agenda. Firstly, that's one big picture. It's very clear what's going on. It's very transparent. We're reporting the truth. The Khalistani campaigners are clearly just the subject of a fake narrative being pushed out by the Indian media, being pushed out across the Canadian media likewise, that it's the RSS up to their old tricks. Why? The big question is why? Well, of course, what's just happened recently? Amit Shah, yes, the government minister, the Indian Home Minister, has been accused publicly in the international press by the Canadian government of being involved in murdering Canadian citizens on Canadian soil, in murdering American citizens on American soil, and potentially murdering British citizens on British soil. That is a massive accusation, backed up with an increasing amount of evidence. That's just hit the headlines a few days ago. So, of course, what is all this about? It's a diversion. What are we all talking about? We're talking about violence on the streets of Canada. We're talking about how Trudeau can't govern his country properly, etc., etc. It's a diversion. All this is an RSS pushed diversion. It's a BJP Narendra Modi classic diversion. Let me refer you back to what happened recently. When Trudeau finally came out with all the evidence, the inquiries revealed the fact that India had been interfering in Canadian politics and probably US politics by implication. What happened then? Oh look, we had a whole series of Air India bomb hoaxes. Yes, the RSS, another classic diversionary tactic. This is what they do. All this is a diversion. We are ranting and raving, the world's press are ranting and raving about this violence in Canada, about the attacks on the Hindu temples, because it's a diversion from the very fact that a senior government minister, the right hand of the Prime Minister of India, was involved in murdering citizens on foreign soil, James. This is what it's all about.
Absolutely, Angus. And the Hindu is very active in Canada. They have the Hindu Conference of Canada, in which the executive director, Ron Banerjee, actually came right out and called for the death of Muslims and Christians in India. And here he is speaking from Canada. It shows the level of hate of the Hindu propaganda machine of Modi in trying to incite the violence and the hatred in our country, in our community, between, as we stated over and over, Angus, the Hindu and the Sikh communities who want to live in harmony and peace here in Canada. And yet you've got these provocateurs, as you very clearly stated and very rightly, trying to stir it up, not only here, but also sending that message that they should be killed. And he was quoted as saying, they deserve it. And that is just not acceptable, Angus.
Indeed. It's an age-old tactic. Narendra Modi is just one in a series of Indian leaders who have followed this age-old tactic. It's easily rolled out. It works every time. Diversion. If you're caught red-handed and you can't defend yourself because the evidence is just so blatantly obvious, what do? You create a diversion to get everybody talking about somebody else, and then you think about how you're going to dig yourself out of the hole that you've dug. Well, this again, James, as we've rightly said, all this is just a plain and simple, good old-fashioned diversion. So, unfortunately, that's what it's all about. There you go. That is the great revelation of the show. It doesn't take rocket science to work it all out. But as our audience know, what we're all about on this show is digging into the truth, revealing the truth, and trying to look at the news behind the news. James, that's what this is all about. It's what's really happening behind the scenes. It's reading between the lines, and it's piecing those jigsaw pieces together to look at the bigger picture. So that's what it's been all about. We will continue to follow this story, of course, and we will continue to try and dig behind those scenes just to see where all this is leading. But let's not take our eye off the most important ball in the game. That is Narendra Modi, who has been caught red-handed undertaking his transnational repression agenda to kill Khalistani campaigners. That's what this is all about. So we will continue to follow that over the coming days and weeks. So, James, let us move things along now and let us get to thousands of comments that have been pouring in to the show from our wonderful audience. Thank you again, as always, to our audience who love to get involved in the show, and we do thank you for all your comments. Loads to get through, so I apologise if we do whip through these so quickly. We would, of course, like to spend more time. But anyway, here we go. S. Baines actually did put in a long comment. I've had to quickly just whip to a salient point that you kindly put here. And actually, you rightly point to the fact Indian consulate members in the temples holding a function to notarise paperwork, hence the need for a protest. Again, you're pointing to this very thing. This is why the Khalistan campaigners were justified, because India's supposed to be secular. And as you rightly point out, this goes against the very constitution of India. You shouldn't be doing it. Also, it wasn't oh yes, this refers back to James. That video where that Indian lady was shouting, it was him or something, the one with the baton. And I made the comment that, well, actually, yeah, go back to India, where India are well known for using large wooden sticks for beating back rioters. It was not a police baton. It was taken away from one of the Hindus who was using it as a weapon. So actually, ironically, that very baton wasn't a police baton. It was actually taken from one of the Hindus rioting. So anyway, 27499 says, oh, thank you for your compliment. Definitely no violence. Oh, here we go, James. This is important. And again, I'm going to reiterate this once again, and we will keep reiterating this. This is so important. James, you referred to it in your section. Don't fall into the Hindutva trap. Stay peaceful, get out there in the streets, but always be seen by the cameras being smiling, positive, peaceful. Above all else, this commenter, Lovedeep, says the same, and Canada with a Man says exactly the same. when you get out there campaigning, and do get out there on the streets, please remain peaceful. Don't fall into the trap. They are trying to provoke you. That's what Brampton was all about. They're trying to provoke you, because once you react, the cameras are always there. That is the material they need, Hindutva needs, to tar you with the Khalistani extremist label, the terrorist label. Don't give them that gift. Do not give them the opportunity. Get out there, but always have a smile on your face, remain peaceful, wave your Khalistan flag, then they cannot use it against you. And the world's press will always report, here are the peaceful, happy, smiling, enthusiastic campaigners democratically campaigning, James. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And, it's just an amazing number of comments here. We could spend all night on just that one alone.
Indeed. So we will rush on. Jaspal Chatterfal says, thanks for us and thank you for your comment. The Indian media is going crazy. Absolutely, it is. It's going mad. Again, it's diversionary tactics. And this happened last year when Trudeau came out with his original accusation about 14 months ago. What happened? The Godi media went into overdrive attacking Canada because they were terrified. They realised that they were losing control of the narrative. They are now losing control of the narrative that the West, as we've reported, have woken up. They're realising transnational repression for what it is. They're realising that the CIA and CSIS and presumably MI6 have uncovered this evidence that the Indian government are involved in transnational repression. So what can they do? They need a diversion. So, of course, the Godi media are absolutely working overtime, pouring the propaganda out there, trying to drown the press, trying to drown the screens across the world with the Indian narrative, just in a sheer desperation. They are desperate. They are terrified. This is how they're like a cornered rat fighting back. Right, B33-263 says, oh yeah, there's a bit more inside info. The Hindu mobs pushing Surrey police, calling them Khalistani police. Sikhs were not even near that area. They were standing on the other side of the road with flags. That Indian lady screaming and pushing a finger into the policeman's face is so fake. It looks like she's been paid. Here we go again, James. It's the agenda. Agent provocateur, is it not? They are there to whip up the crowd. And this.
Absolutely, and that's why she had her video going and screaming from behind. I mean, it was just so ridiculous when you could clearly see the Sikh community peacefully out on the street, and yet the police, the big melee was between the police and the Hindu group that was out of control.
This is what all the intelligence services around the world do. The CIA have been up to it, I've no doubt, the British intelligence and all the other intelligence services, and of course RAW, they all use these tactics. It's very easy to whip up a mob. You just put a few plants in a crowd who pretend to be a protester, and they start the chants, they start provoking, they start whipping up a small core of people around them, who in turn has this impact. Human beings are very gullible. They will follow what their fellow human beings do beside them. They almost naturally, psychologically work in crowds. They're whipped up into a hysteria. And the intelligence services know this. It's an old psychological tactic that they use. This is what agents provocateurs, this is what they're trained to do. They get into crowds like this and they whip up the anger, they whip up the emotion. And of course, the crowd then builds its momentum, and then suddenly it runs out of control. That's how these things work. That's what happened in the Sikh genocide in 1984. It's a tried and successful tactic. So absolutely. So that Indian lady screaming could well have been an RSS Hindutva plant. Achar Singh Gill says there are allegations, counter-allegations. India media is spewing its usual poison, absolutely, making up false stories, claiming women and children were attacked by Khalistanis. Again, show us the evidence. This is so true. Again, it's part of this fake narrative. Human 19007 says RSS propaganda again across the West after Amit Shah warrants and leader opposition candidate didn't participate in Diwali. Actually, this is an important point. I think maybe James, you can correct on this. I don't know if this is true. But Pierre Poilievre, it said here, didn't attend Diwali because even Poilievre realised, hang on a second, I need to start distancing myself from this because it's going to start damaging his own political reputation by the looks of things.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was possible to damage his reputation any worse. But you're absolutely correct. He did at the last minute cancel the Diwali celebrations that happen every year on the Hill in Ottawa. And he did just distance himself, and he didn't give a lot of explanation. And a lot of people were very upset about that. And rightfully so. It's something that's happened for decades, and he just basically snubbed it. And I don't know that that was the right decision or an appropriate decision, regardless as to what's going on.
And this is actually is a really important comment that's been put in here. It's actually a very insightful comment, because what Human is saying here is that, and this often happens in politics, is that when somebody has done something wrong, those around that person will usually support that person to see if they can ride through the storm and can basically get away with it. But when they start realising that the evidence is mounting and that person is starting to look more and more guilty, and it looks like that person is going to fall, then that person's supporters start dropping away in a self-protective mechanism. They're looking after their own careers, saying, hang on a second, I better not be associated with that person because it's going to start damaging my own self. This is what's starting to happen here, is that even Hindutva and RSS mouthpieces in the public eye in Canada are starting to realise, hang on, the momentum is shifting now, that actually it's starting to become a little bit clearer and people are starting to realise what's going on here. I better start distancing myself from this. This is likewise what happened with the Hindu temple, who have now expelled that agent provocateur. They've realised, hang on a second, they in the past may have been aligned with the RSS, but they're suddenly realising, hang on, the RSS is now publicly being outed as being guilty in all this. We better distance ourselves. This is what's happening, is that people are starting to distance themselves. They're realising that Modi himself is starting to become an international pariah. So, of course, the world is now starting to move away. They don't want to be associated with a pariah. So this is where the support suddenly starts falling away. And when this starts building up momentum, it happens very quickly, is then this is how governments fall. This is how regimes fall, etc., etc. So this actually, ironically, could be the start of something. Let's keep our eyes on that. Interesting times. And Free Spirit, a very interesting comment here. Actually, in the past, and again, I think this is where I referred to India police being well known for using their batons, rightly pointing out they've used live ammunition and fired tear gas on unarmed peaceful Sikh farmers. Yes, absolutely right. We reported on this at the time. Don't forget the farmers' protest. Indian police don't just use wooden batons. They are known to use live ammunition. There is the belief that at least one protester in the farmers' protest was killed by a policeman, by a gun, live ammunition. So let's not forget what the Indian police are actually capable of. And we all also know they are capable of torture. User DD something or other. Right, world should wake up. The real face of Hindutva is being uncovered. Hindutva is poisonous for humanity, James. I think that is a very, very clear and true message.
Absolutely, I totally agree, Angus.
Humanity indeed must stand up and fight this evil of Hindutva. Well said. Now, Gooden Guman says, I don't believe that most Sikhs would act in this kind of demonstration outside the mandir. It has been staged by colliders, deliberately to defame Sikhs or their demands. It's appalling how low they'll stoop. Yeah. Final comment there, control damage. Here we go. Yeah, you've got it, haven't you? As have many other people. We all know in the community what it's all about. The question is the wider world waking up to this? I think the answer to that is yes, James, it is.
It is, and I really hope that it is big change coming in a positive way, but I'm quite concerned about the current situation.
Indeed. And Ramsey Rock, this is an interesting comment. I always like to find comments that are little wisps of smoke that point to a fire somewhere. Now, quite often wisps of smoke can be meaningless as just a random wisp of smoke. Sometimes they can actually point to something a lot bigger, like a roaring inferno beneath the surface. Well, here's an interesting comment. Something big's coming. Even India has taken all its gold back. Now, quite often countries store their gold reserves in, for example, Fort Knox in the US or the Bank of England here in the UK. And sometimes these countries ask for their gold back, their physical gold back, because they fear something or something big is about to happen. Well, Ramsey Rocks, I didn't know that India's asked for all its gold back. I don't even know where it's stored. We must look this up, James. Why? Interesting. I don't know. I'll leave that one hanging in the air, James.
Exactly, right? We don't know why. We don't know what to really make of a lot of the situation, but we just hang in there and hopefully common sense is going to prevail eventually.
Indeed, it implies that something is going on behind the scenes, that people behind the scenes know something's coming. Well, who knows? Who knows? It could even be linked to Trump. Who knows, James? But let's not go down that road.
It could, but it's also a matter of the BRICS system and everything else. So, as I said, hopefully it's not something nefarious, but it very well could be with that new system.
Indeed, and actually, we did talk a while back about the BRICS, and in fact, one of our interesting commenters made a great comment about how the rupee, the Indian rupee, is actually is fundamentally a very weak currency compared to the Chinese yuan. Maybe, of course, gold is a solid currency. In reality, it is the most currencies in the old days used to be hedged or linked directly to the value of gold. Not so much the case now with fiat currency, but certainly one wonders if India is running scared about the rupee and it needs to get its hands back on its gold reserves to prop up its own economy. Who knows? Well, we'll see. We'll see. Gurpinder Brar. Now, apologies for this. You seem to be unable to find the website that we referred to the other day, 1984 Sikh Archive. I will post up in the commentary section after today's video. If I forget, please do remind me. But when we edit this and I put the description, I will put the link in the description below today's video. If you can't find it, it means my old, mature brain has actually forgotten about it by the time I get there. So if I have forgotten, please do remind me. But I will put that after today's video for you. Right, next set of comments. Indigit Beans, thank you for your robust coverage. Oh, here we go, some shout outs, James. We've got Indigit Baines in London. Welcome to the show, and hello to London, of course, my fellow Londoners. Gurjot Singh Shah in Brampton. Yes, of course, there on the scene. Sukhvinder Singh Riat, likewise in Brampton. Let us know what you've seen in Brampton. Send us an email, what you've witnessed. If you witnessed any of these things, we'd like to know. And James Moore in Canada, Ontario. We've got 27499. And we've got Toronto again, Desh Khalistan. And Rajinder Jawanda over in California, Sully, California. And James, I have to laugh about this, and I think we had a laugh about this one yesterday. Lakwinder Singh and Neutrality have both said exactly the same comment from Chicago. And one wonders, I think, again, there's a bit of double accounting going on here.
Or maybe their English translation of their name is Pete and Repeat. Maybe they're twins.
It could well be. Or it could be that maybe their English is so bad that they've had to copy and paste, not really fully understanding what they're saying. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But thank you from Chicago for watching. And thank you to all of you across the world who are watching us. Very much appreciated. Keep your comments coming in about where you're from. We do like to see where you're all calling from. It's nice to increase the size of our community and our family. And the final set of comments for the day. Achar Singhil says, thank you for your... Here we go. It's this word again. Maturity, James. We are mature, apparently, which I always have a laugh at.
I'll try to avoid that in the future.
It's not often I'm called mature. I suppose age-wise mature, but that's where it probably is as far as it goes. But balanced analysis, that's what matters. Thank you, Achar Singhil, for your comment. It is hopefully balanced analysis. Now, Sandeep Kaur, and again, I had to practice my Punjabi on this, and I thought it was Khalistan Zindabad. It's not. Here we go, James. This translates as long live Punjabi, long live Sikhs for justice, long live Satluj TV. Thank you, Sandeep Kaur. James, we must improve our Punjabi.
Apparently so, Angus.
And the final comment to wrap the show up, I want to do this because this is a lovely philosophical comment. And I think we should all leave the show on these thoughts. Jasleen says, Jasleen agrees that Khalistan is, we need to go the extra mile to show the peaceful nature of our protest. How very true. Even though as human beings, it's sometimes challenging to simmer passion on ice, in other words, to keep our emotions in check. But fire is our resilience of deafening peaceful protest. This will be our ultimate test. We can do it, brothers and sisters. Khalistan is our goal. Let's wear the blinkers. It's time to win this final race. Khalistan Zindabad. Absolutely, James, we couldn't put it better, could we?
Absolutely, and that's always a beautiful way to end it.
Indeed. In other words, that message is a great way to finish on. It is a great message. It's basically, be patient. Khalistan will come. It is a challenge. The community is being provoked from every angle. It is being provoked by an increasingly desperate and terrified Indian regime. They know that the Khalistan movement is winning. They know that Khalistan is coming, that it is inevitable, and they will continue to provoke and fight like a cornered rat. But remain patient, remain peaceful, follow the words and the philosophy of Sikhi, and you will prevail. I will absolutely guarantee it. But on that note, we must wrap up Perspectives for another day. Please don't forget to keep your comments coming in. They are very much appreciated and they always form a great part of the show that we do love to talk about. So please do let us know all your thoughts, comments and even criticisms. Also, you can, of course, message us directly at message@satloadtv.com if there's something you'd like to let us know that you don't want to put in the public domain. But in the meantime, it is a great big goodbye from me, and it is the likewise from James.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe. I got to go get some coffee to wash down the rest of that humble pie.
Indeed. Thanks so much to each and every one of you for watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.